I'm a theater maker, I'm an interaction designer, a developer, and a VRer. I've been, as Mike said, involved with StoryCode since 2012. I was lucky enough to get involved in the transmedia hackathon and to be on the winning team. We developed a transmedia piece that involved live performance, because that's what everybody in our group had started doing before moving on to other media. More recently, I was a developer on 0 Days VR, which was just released on the Oculus Store. It was featured at Sundance earlier this year. It has received a bunch of prizes, which is very gratifying. And I'm the director of a piece called To Be With Hamlet, which is an ongoing project where we're working on live theater in virtual reality. And we were at the Tribeca Immersive Tribeca Festival this spring. I've been in theater since I was 10. I've been programming computers since I was long. I've been making VR for the past 2 years. I love theater, I love VR, and I think they're the same thing. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit from what immersive theater can teach VR makers, and I'm going to talk about what theater in general can teach VR makers. Before I do that, I'm just curious, how many people here are actually actively working with VR? Okay, cool. So I think a lot of what I'm going to say you guys probably have already figured out or come across one way or another, but I'm just going to put it all out there and see what raises questions. I'm going to talk about what in theater is useful to us as VR creators. Think about what theater has been doing right for the past 2.5 millennia and see what we can draw from that to put some oomph into our VR experiences. And I'll talk a little bit about the work I've been doing along the way. So to start with, I'm just going to say, in my theater work, these have sort of been my main goals: to tell good stories. I think that's kind of the goal of everybody who's drawn to theater. But I've always been working with blurring the boundaries between reality and the world of the play. And I want to create experiences that really transport the audience, reawaken wonder, and inspire new perspectives. And I think Andrew really put it really well here, so I'm going to quote him. To create an experience which the audience can go through, come out the other side, and have a deeper appreciation for reality, and maybe be able to engage in reality in a better way. What's the problem with VR? I think a lot of people who've been working with VR have been asking the question, how do you tell a story, right? There have been a lot of solutions proposed, and many of them work, so I'm not saying that it's completely unsolved, but I think it's still a pressing question. How do you make a compelling experience that will make people want to come back to it, right? A lot of people try VR and say, oh, that's cool, and then put it down. You also want them to tell their friends to try it. You want them to want to try the next thing that you make. Because we need to sell headsets so that we as content creators can get the money to make the content. I won't go into that catch-22, but I think that's something we should keep in mind. So what's so hard about it? And as I said, I think a lot of people have solved a lot of parts of these problems. I don't think anybody's really cracked the whole nut yet. It's a new medium, and as such, we have no established conventions, right? We have just the beginnings of some theory that people have proposed, and we have a lot of experiments that people have done. But we still have a lot to learn. And we've been looking at other media for guidelines, right? I suspect that most of you have been working in film prior to getting into VR. There are a lot of people who are doing game design before getting into VR. But I think we've been overlooking the obvious. So, as filmmakers, right, the main language of cinema is the frame and the cut. And neither of those work very well in VR, right? You don't have a frame. That's the whole point. And cutting is jarring. But there is a medium that deals with action in continuous space and continuous time, and has been doing it for millennia. Theater, right? And theater has tools to has tools that have been developed over the time that we can adapt to storytelling in VR. So, just a quick caveat: there are lots of ways to create compelling experiences in VR, and I'm not trying to lay down any prescriptive rules here. I'm just talking about what I have been trying to figure out in terms of telling stories, where I can retain some authorial control over the experience. Okay, so let's start with this. What is theater? I pulled out these quotes. The great Greek philosopher Wikipedia. Theater is a collaborative form of fine art that uses live performers, typically actors or actresses, to present the experience of a real or imagined event before a live audience in a specific place, right, often staged. And then I found this piece, which I think is really interesting. Theater is preeminently a spatial medium. It can dispense with language, but never with space. I think that's really key. Theater is place. Theater takes place in a place. You have to go somewhere to watch theater, right? The place is where we establish the magic circle, which allows us to then create the imaginary place where the story takes place. So theater creates a place where the story takes place. Because theater is place, theater has always been immersive. And immersive theater, which is, a fairly new development in some respects, is just a little bit more immersive than theater has always been. Okay, so what is VR? Here I went to Merriam-Webster, the great authority. An artificial environment which is experienced through sensory stimuli provided by a computer. And Wikipedia again. Virtual reality is a computer technology that uses headsets to generate realistic images, sounds, and other sensations that simulates a user's physical presence in a virtual or imaginary environment. So every definition of VR that I found uses the word environment. What is environment? It's place. So VR is also place. It creates a sense of presence in a place by fooling us into thinking that we're actually there. That's what VR does best, and that's why we're using it. Have I convinced you yet? So as I like to say, theater is the original VR, and VR is theater. When I think about compelling narrative experiences in VR, these are some of the criteria that I hold up for myself. I want it to be fully 3D, so I can be fully immersed. Spatial staging, continuous action, believable characters, that's important for the story, right? And audience engagement. And these are the things that theater has been doing from the beginning. There is one other thing about theater that is really important to bring up. Peter Brook, the great director, began his book, The Empty Space, with this quote. I can take any empty space and call it a bare stage. A man walks across this empty space while someone else is watching him, and this is all that is needed for an act of theater to be engaged. So we already talked about the space, but what Peter Brook is pointing out is that theater is people. Theater is essentially fundamentally social. The power of theater is that they're real people, real live people. And theater is a communal experience. It evolved, it came into being as a place where society could come together, right? And help strengthen. So I believe that in order to really take what I want to do in theater and do it in VR, I have to figure out how to bring this connection with live people into VR. So what I've been doing is working on a couple of projects where we're using 3D computer-generated VR in game engines, and we're using real live people and motion capture to bring them into the VR space to animate the avatars. And we're also tracking the audience members so they see each other. So I'm going to show you a couple of these pieces. So this is a little clip of what we did with To Be with Hamlet, where
Hamlet meets his father's ghost and learns of his uncle's treachery. This is their motion and their voices will be transmitted into the VR world that you will be jumping into when you put on the headsets. So go on in.
Whither wilt thou lead me? Speak. I'll go no further.
Mark me.
I will.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, for the day confined to fasting fires, till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are burnt and purged away.
Aye, thou poor ghost. While memory holds a seat in this distracted globe, remember thee. Yea, from the table of my memory I'll wipe away all trivial thought, and thy commandment all alone shall live within the book and volume of my brain.
As you can see, we had the characters rendered as avatars. The character of Hamlet was actually a 3D scan of the actor playing Hamlet. But we also rendered the audience members. We rendered them as sort of ghostly apparitions. In this incarnation, we actually rendered them as people with headsets, which is something that I'm going to revisit when we do our next iteration. But the point is that we have live actors performing live for a live audience. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I talk about some of the takeaways for VR, but one of the things I just want to point out is this is not easy. This is the system diagram for theater. It's very direct, right? We have the actors, we have the stage, and we have the audience. This is the system diagram for To Be With Hamlet. You can see we're going through a lot of layers of technology and mediation. And so one of the key questions that we've been asking is, can this sense of having a live performer there transmit through all of these layers? The results we've had so far have been pretty encouraging. People really report that they really do feel that the actors are there and want to have more interaction with them, which I think is really indicates that it's working. The process is a little silly looking. It is a whole new process to figure out how to direct actors in VR. So then another project I've been working on at the same time is, so that project, Hamlet, is with a group of colleagues at NYU, and this is with another group of colleagues at NYU that are based in Ken Perlin's lab, using a technology called the Hologen, which is a platform that they developed, which allows for co-located multiplayer virtual reality, which means that everybody is in the same physical space and in the same virtual space at the same time. So again, you can all see each other represented as avatars in the virtual space. So this is a recent experiment that we did.
Oh dear, I'm late! I'm late! Look at that! Do you see that? It's a talking rabbit! Mr. Rabbit, wait! Can I help you?
Oh, I'm so late! I'm so late! She'll surely have my head!
Oh, a very small door. We're all too big to fit through. What should I do?
Make the door bigger.
I don't know. Maybe if you help me look around.
Yes, drink more.
Drink? Oh, this right here.
Right there.
What do you think? Should I give it a try?
Sure, what can go wrong?
I know, right? All right, guys.
in this experience, as you can see, everybody was there, which gives us the added affordance in that they can all talk to each other. So the actors and the audience can actually communicate vocally, which is something Andrew was talking about in his pieces. It definitely adds to the feeling of being present in the story world and being present with the characters. We embodied, or I guess portrayed, the audience members as field mice, which, again, I'll talk about a little bit more later, but it basically allows them to understand why they're there, but not feel like they have to do anything other than watch. So let's go on to what can VR learn from theater. Okay, so the first thing is immersive storytelling works, right? We know this because immersive theater works. You can create an environment in which a story takes place, let the audience loose in it, tell your story, and the audience will have a hugely rich experience and probably even pay to come back. So let's all be encouraged by that. So one of the key elements to making that happen, of course, is spatial storytelling. So this is a concept that I think that the phrase was coined by game designers. But if you talk to any theatrical set designer and start talking to them about what spatial storytelling means, they'll be like, yeah, that's what I've been doing my entire professional career. It's about designing the space so that it helps tell the story, right? And then it is about arranging the story elements in the 3D space so that the way the actors have to move, the characters have to move, helps fit the story. And so you're thinking about where the actors are relative to the viewer, how they perform the scene in the space, and where the viewer has to look or move, right? So one of the key tools for doing this, besides the set design tools, are directing focus. And I think a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people ask about this in doing 360 video. There are some obvious tools that we use, lighting and sound, but the most important one is actually the actor's attention. So the thing that will most reliably direct your audience's focus is if the characters' focus is drawn to that place, because that's what we do. We're herd animals. If somebody sees something that might be dangerous, we're all going to look, right? So I just want to call that out as something to keep in mind. So the most important element of all of this is presence, the sensation that we are actually there. And this is something that we don't really think about in theater that much. It's kind of a given. If you're in the theater, you're in the theater, right? And if you're not in the theater, then you're not watching the show. But we have this analogous concept, which is the suspension of disbelief. So this is basically the agreement that you make when you enter the theater, that I'm going to accept this fictional world that you're portraying for me on stage or around me if it's an immersive, right? And I'm going to contend that suspension of disbelief is an opt-out phenomenon, which is that we tend to believe what we see unless something pulls us out of it. So in theater, if the actors are performing and their performances are convincing, their characters are realistic, the emotions that they're expressing make sense, if there's nothing that's overly jarring about the presentation or that makes us feel scared or anything like that, we're going to buy in. In VR, if the rendering of the world around us is, sufficiently convincing, and by convincing I don't necessarily mean photorealistic, right? It can be very highly stylized, but it should be stylized in a way that's consistent and allows us to buy into the place that we built, right? Then we will buy into it, right? But the sense of presence is fragile, and we can easily be pulled out by a couple of things. The big ones, obviously, are the physical ones. And the one that I think a lot of people who are coming from the world of film don't really respect is this sensation that my body knows whether it's moving or not, and if you start pushing me around, I'm gonna get angry or nauseous, right? So camera moves are really they can be done. I've seen them done in ways that work, but obviously there's something you have to be really careful about. When you're presenting VR, obviously you can't control this at home as well, but when you're presenting VR at an event, you really have to take care of your audience. I think that's a given, but nothing pulls somebody out of an experience more than like running into a wall or tripping over a cable. But another one that I think a lot of people don't think about is personal space. You really have to respect the viewer's proprioceptive sense of self and not walk through them. So I did a 360 video early on where you as a viewer are sitting in a chair in the middle of the room and things are happening around you, and at one point one of the actors gets really close to you and people responded, "That makes me really uncomfortable that this guy just walked through me." So that's something you really need to take care of. But the biggest enemy of presence is psychological, I think. This question of who am I and why am I here? So again, this is something that theater, as I said, doesn't usually have to deal with. I'm here because I am the audience, the audience that come to see it. But in VR, all of these questions come up. Am I part of the story world? Do they see me? What is expected of me? And I think that this is really a key question because this comes down to our fundamental need to feel safe, right? If we're in a new situation and we don't know what is expected of us, we can feel very uncomfortable. And that also can pull us out of feeling present and engaged in the experience. So you need to really establish this clearly and early. And it doesn't have to be anything more complicated than you are an audience member and nothing is expected of you other than watching. But you need to make that clear because the first question people are asking themselves when they're put in the world, I believe, is who am I and why am I here? It can also be a passive character or it could be an active character. We can enable different kinds of agency to allow them to actually interact with the characters. So I'm going to point to the Alice and the Hologram example as a case where we made basically passive characters, but we made it clear to them who they were, and we allowed them to interact with the other characters by allowing them to speak. So when Alice is looking for the bottle to drink to shrink, she would actually go and ask the mice, "Hey, have you seen something?" And they would have an engagement there. But the mice know that they don't have to do anything active because they don't have hands. So this comes to this last question, which again Andrew talked about at length, but this question of agency. The VR viewer wants to be able to interact with the world. The sense of presence inspires this. The first thing that happens to a lot of people when they go into VR is they start looking around, right? And then if they can move, if it's a room scale experience, they'll start moving around. And then they'll try to touch something. And they'll try to do this whether you render hands for them or not. If there's a book on a table over there, you'll see people do this, even if they don't have hands in VR. If they do have hands in VR, then you've got a whole other complication of they want to do something with their hands. And so if you don't enable something for them to do with their hands, then they're going to feel constrained. But if you do enable them to do something with their hands, like picking things up, they're going to start throwing things around. So these are all just things you have to keep in mind. But of course, the big question of agency comes back to this question of authorial control, right? Do you want the character, the audience members to be able to come up to the actors and do something to change the course of the story? I don't. In most of the work I'm doing, I think that those experiences are really cool and fun and valuable, and I like participating in them. But the stuff that I'm trying to do right now is tell stories where I control the arc of the story and the events that happen. So I need to control what degree of agency I enable. And I just want to propose that having control over your own viewpoint is sufficient agency. So to be with Hamlet, the audience members can wander wherever they want. We've built out this medieval castle. It's not fully built out because it's still in prototype stage, but they can basically wander away from the playing area and get lost and go explore. And that gives them the sense of both, this is a real space and I am here because I can go check it out, and a sense of some control over their experience, right? The scene is still happening. If they miss it, they miss it, and I'm actually okay with that as a storyteller. But obviously, I want to try to shape the experience so that they'll be drawn back to the scene. And then the other thing is, as I said, you can let them manipulate things in the world. I think there's something else I want to point out, and then I'm at the end, which is that giving people hands is risky. So they want to be able to manipulate things in the world, and if you give them things to manipulate, they'll probably throw them, which in a lot of cases probably doesn't matter. If you don't give them things to manipulate, they'll start touching each other. In some sense, it's an important lesson, especially as creators of social VR experiences, because we want to make sure that we're creating an environment where people behave, right? Where they respect each other's persons. So we don't want to set up a situation where they have hands and they feel like the only thing they can do is go over and start touching other people, right? Even if it's in a VR experience like Hamlet, where you're not actually touching the other's physical person, because you're each in your own VR space, but you're touching their avatars. And in some cases, this is great. Like some people went and found their friends and started playing patty cake, right? Or started boxing. In other cases, we had people go over to the avatar of Hamlet during the scene and start filling him up. Yeah, so I'm just pointing this out. It's like in a 5-minute scene, people will find ways to be rude. And there are really important lessons in the worlds of massively multiplayer dungeons and things like that that we really need to study as social VR creators to make sure that we understand how to set up structures so that people will want to behave appropriately and not want to not behave appropriately. So that's what I've got for you tonight. I have a lot more to say, but I don't have any more time. So thank you very much.